So I'm 14 years old. I'm looking at the bar that I'm lifting on with like a measly 45 and a couple of change plates, getting under it, hoping that taking it out and bringing it to my chest is not going to bury me. And the only thing I could think at the time was, fuck, I'm weak. So I was in the high school weight room right next to Joe, one of the starting linemen. And Joe was built like you would think a trucker would be built. He had like Campbell's soup cans for wrists, one of the girthiest people I've ever met. And he was just bouncing 365 off of his engorged chest like he was a toddler in a bouncy house. Now I could have said, hey, Joe's a big guy. Of course he's that strong. But Joe was also a sophomore. Now, as I was looking around trying to figure out if I was wasting my time in the gym, I noticed that there was something like 7 or 8 kids on my high school football team that could bench 315 or more. And they weren't all behemoths either. And that number burned into my brain like I'm sure it has for so many of you. 315 is like the gold standard of being a strong bencher. So the question is, what sets apart people that grind for years and never quite get there versus the people that come in and hit it while they're technically still children? And from that, how do we figure out what you can do to expedite the process? Now, we can't even get to that discussion until we address the boogeyman that hangs over any discussion about strength standards, and that's expectations. No matter what, you are not going to get to your goals, at least in any reasonable amount of time, until you adjust your expectations properly. Because feeling like you should be getting something at an unreasonable pace for no reason other than you saw somebody else do it, not only can it derail you, but it can make it miserable. It can fill you with anxiety and feelings like you're not good enough, like you're wasting your time. I absolutely went through those periods where I wasn't seeing growth and I felt like I was falling behind the people that I had put a target on. Now, when I took a step back and actually got perspective, I realized that I was setting my goals as high as possible, unreasonably high. And just because I picked the best guy in the room and said I need to be better than him, doesn't mean that I'm entitled to actually be better than him. The truth is, if I compared myself to everybody else who I was better than, it was 100% a byproduct of all the work, time, attention, obsession I put into this that they didn't. That's the important thing to know. See, the difficulty in getting to a 315 bench hinges on 2 things basically. 1 is genetics and 2 is your training. Now the thing is, training you have control over, genetics you don't, and training encompasses a lot of things. There are so many different avenues that it's nonsense to describe this as anything other than an attainable goal by those who want it bad enough. You can go a technical route. You can go a strength-specific route, focus on neurological developments. You can target weaknesses. You can build out your frame by adding more mass. There's so many different thresholds, protocols. You can tweak almost endlessly to your personal preferences, to your tolerances. There's no end to the amount of trial and error that you can engage in. It's just a matter of, will you be around long enough to try enough things to figure out what works for you? Genetics is a different story. You got the genetics you have, and just because you want to be the guy doesn't entitle you to being the guy. Now here's the rub, kids. That's true for everything. And if you're only going to pursue difficult things because success was guaranteed ahead of time, you're not going to amount to shit anywhere in life whatsoever. Even though I had doubts early on, I knew I had so much to gain by continuing to train that in any scenario, being in that gym was better than being on the fucking couch, that quitting just didn't make sense. Maybe my genetics weren't great and there's nothing I could do about that, but I wasn't going to miss out on the opportunity to find out. So this brings us to the first actionable point for how to achieve a 315 bench, and that is, you don't just need a plan, you need a change of plan. If you're here watching this, you're probably at least to a 200-pound bench press. The assumption is you've made some progress, gotten some strength, and now you're trying to level up firmly into that intermediate territory. The bonus of being a new lifter is just about anything gets you strong. The difficulty comes when reality comes and slaps you in the face. Right around when you think this is easy, I figured it out, all of a sudden diminished returns set in, you stop growing, you might even get some overuse issues, and you're left at the dreaded plateau and you don't know what to fucking do. You have to understand the point of training is to adapt to the stress that you put yourself through before. If you grew muscle and got stronger, it's so the workouts you were doing no longer register to your body. That's the game. So it's up to you to find methodologies that continue to push that forward. So you gotta switch it up, bro. It's like the most basic advice there is. Now here's the ways you can take what you were doing before and tweak it to make sure that you keep growing. You can include novelty. This doesn't mean program hopping into something different entirely. It means that if you've been going really heavy for a while, consider going a bit lighter. If you've been putting out a ton of effort going to failure, consider leaving a few reps in the tank. If you're the king of volume, consider a more recovery-focused, intensity-based approach. And if you've been benching one way meticulously for a long time, consider incorporating some different technical variations. The second option is to do more. There's nothing more proven to get you out of a rut then doing more work. No matter who you are, if you're habituated to a reasonable amount of work, increasing that work by a certain percentage is going to just about guarantee progress. That's like one of the most reliable, widely demonstrated things in like all the field of strength training. The two best options are to mess with frequency or volume. If you've been benching 1 or 2 times a week, consider adding an extra bench day. That is almost guaranteed to drive your bench forward unless you're suffering from some crippling overuse issues, or you can leave your frequency exactly the same and just add another set on each exercise. I like to force into my clients' brains the association that the failure to grow is failure to do more work. That as you get your body to adapt to increasing amounts of volume, you see growth. That's just the way it is. Oh, so why don't you just do 100 sets of everything? Because training is cyclical, you fucking idiots. The entirety of sports, including powerlifting, Olympic lifting, strongman, is based off some type of periodized or cyclical approach. Remember what I said about diminished returns? You habituate to what you were doing, progress slows down, but you're still expending the same amount of effort, so you move into something new where now you're on the right side of that curve, exerting the same amount of effort, but getting a novel stimulus. Now you're starting to grow again. Back and forth, ebb and flow. Only somebody who's ran out of the last 2 brain cells that they had to rub together thinks that training is just finding one thing and then just doing that indefinitely as hard as you can. But that's enough of that. Guys, don't forget to check out our Discord. We got Bromley HQ and we got questions and answers for the Base Strength AI app. We're running hot with the Base Strength AI app. We got new analytics. We got a new dashboard user profile. We're putting new programs up there very soon. We got all kinds of things going on. Save yourself the frustration of having to guess about each training decision. Let us personalize your workout in real time based on your immediate feedback. Not even an online coach is capable of doing that for you. And guess what, guys? It's 1/10 of the cost. Feedback's been amazing. It's what I use to get this contest cycle going. It works exceptionally well. I'm very proud of how this came out. The third thing you can focus on is more general development. A lot of people these days start lifting with very specialized approaches. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you started with a barbell and you got very strong just benching on a linear progression, you're going to have holes in your physical development. Benching requires well-rounded muscular development in a way that benching alone doesn't get you. It doesn't get you rear delts and lats and front delts and biceps and everything. You need accessory work in order to do that. Nobody who's chasing a big bench has lats that are big enough, shoulders that are big enough, triceps that are big enough, and even forearms and bicep work can absolutely help. Here's a twist. You can actually work on your pectorals, and it turns out it's really good for jacking your bench up, which is one of the reasons why there's so many IFBB pro benchers that have benches that are strong as shit, even though they don't care about maxing on bench. Having really big pecs just drives your bench up. It's science. Now, this list of options isn't that big, but it still gives you enough variety where you're gonna overwhelm yourself with how to change your program. You're gonna wanna do everything. As soon as somebody says, switch it up, bro, it's super easy to hit the pitfall of like aimlessly jumping from one program to another with no real direction. It's like any decision I make is good. I'm gonna make it super easy. This is not surgical. Remove from your brain the thought that you have to make some perfect granular surgical decision or it's a waste. This is the opposite of surgical. This is like aiming a shovel at a patch of dirt. It's kind of hard to mess up, and if you do mess up, it's pretty low stakes. What you want to do instead of changing programs is to titrate. If you have a program, a framework that works for you, get comfortable changing that framework without feeling like you have to call it something else. You like 5-3-1? You can do 5-3-1 with a second day. You don't have to message Jim Wendler to ask. So I'm gonna make it really easy for you guys. When you get to the end of a block and you're looking to change something up, focus on 3 things. Focus on your technique. Have you been going to your chest and pausing? Try to do a spotto press for a while. Change your grip. Do it with your feet up in the air. Make one small change that substantially changes the way that the bar moves and focus on getting good with that for a while. 2, focus on your frequency. How many days out of the week you train. If you're used to doing 1 or 2 days, do a third day. If you're used to doing 3 or 4 days, do 1 or 2 days. And number 3, volume in each workout. Those are the 3 easiest things you can do. The number of sets, the number of days per week, and how you handle your main bench work. that shouldn't change the fundamental structure of the program, but give you more than enough variety to move things forward when you get stuck. So now that we have that, we can go to point number 2. That's to understand that progression is absolutely king. It doesn't matter what your protocol is. Again, it's cyclical. We're adaptive creatures. Something that works really well for you right now, it's not going to do that in 6 months. So whether you're high intensity, low intensity, high frequency, low frequency, it doesn't matter. Whatever program you're doing, the only thing that determines whether or not you grow from it is your ability to progress stress within that framework while you're doing it. And that is going to hinge on your ability to recover. This is the thing bodybuilders don't have to worry about. Bodybuilders don't have to think, hey, how much am I going to be able to bench tomorrow, given the fact that I'm exhausted from my back and bicep workout today? They don't have to plan ahead to make sure that they're following some pattern of recovery. They can just go in and go ham, and that's kind of a superpower. But when you're specifically training for strength, you need to be able to have some predictive power over the numbers you're hitting, and you need to know when you're starting to overreach, because eventually, especially with those heavy sets, you're going to end up backsliding. You're going to feel like shit. It's going to feel like you got weaker. And that's where the structure of your training comes in. One of the best ways to make sure you're working hard enough to get growth, but that you're giving yourself that little bit of time to recover so you don't just grind yourself into the ground, is to follow some type of wave structure. I write about this in my book, Base Strength. It's super simple. You're going to see it mirrored in a lot of other programs. It just guarantees that you're going to be actively moving forward. You know what you're actively chasing week to week, but also it has that out. It gives you that bit of deload at the end that no matter what you do, it allows you to recover. It guarantees you're going to catch up. A wave just means you're starting at a somewhat reduced stress. It might be the weight, it might be the effort, it might be the total number of sets, and you're just going to move it forward a little bit, hitting a crescendo at week 3, 4, or 5. That's how you should conceptualize blocks. At least it's the easiest way to conceptualize a block. And then at the end, it drops back down and resets. So when you drop back down to that first easy week, now your body can play catch up, even if you were running yourself into the ground the week before. Just do that like clockwork, no matter what program you're running. Anticipate this run up and then drop back and repeat. Now, the third thing, none of you are going to want to hear this. We talked about your training, but this is one of the biggest things holding most of you guys back that are trying to get bigger and stronger. That's your shitty diet, guys. I talked about this in another video recently. There's this epidemic in strength culture where it's not cool to talk about diet as if we're performance athletes. It's super bizarre. It doesn't fly in any other sport. I don't care that you think it's funny to fuck off on your diet and just go eat a bunch of noodles and ramen. It's people either ignore diet outright, or when they engage with it, it goes into fadville very quick, where it's carnivore or keto, carbs are the enemy, or you're doing GOMAD or whatever the fuck. Eating for size and strength is the easiest thing in the world. Eat like a goddamn bodybuilder. Even if you don't want to be that meticulous with your diet, you have to track how much protein you're getting. You have to have some ballpark of where you are in relation to your total daily expenditure. And look, there might be 3 of you guys who are wired to bench 315 at 140 pounds. Almost all of you watching are going to need to gain a muscle in order to do that. Weight moves weight, and most people don't commit to gaining weight because they're afraid that they're going to get fat. And the ones that don't care about getting fat are already halfway through their daily gallon of milk. Ignoring diet or actively trying to stay small, it's the equivalent of saying I don't want to pay attention to the most basic things that give the biggest return, but I still want elite results anyways. That dog don't hunt, chief. Now, this is near and dear to my heart because I've been on every side of this equation as a weight class competitor competing in the 231s in strongman. I got very fat trying to bulk up because I liked being strong and I liked competing with the heavyweights, but I was also really lazy about my diet. I did the GOMAD Pop-Tarts and Mountain Dew diet for a long time, cut 30 pounds of weight at 30% body fat to make weight instead of dieting down. I've also gotten really lean. Currently, I'm about the leanest I've ever been in competitive shape. And in hindsight, I can look at all this and just really wish that when I was 18 or 19, somebody slapped me in the fucking head and said, take your diet seriously, you idiot. The fact is, almost none of you need to be cutting or bulking. If you transition to the type of diet you should be on, which is a regular ass bodybuilding diet, if you're doing anything that's not that, you're fucking off. But if you do that, just get the basic diet at maintenance levels, you're going to see an immense transformation in how you put on muscle and how you lose body fat without technically being in a cut or a bulk. Only when you've done that with confidence for a long time, then do you make small changes in order to specialize with specific goals, and then you'll be able to do it without fucking yourself up because you jumped into something really hard, really taxing, and really complex. It almost sounds like all the training advice I give you. So that's it, guys. I don't want to hear anything about about 315 being an impossible task for natties. It is one of the most attainable things, but it requires climbing a mountain that many people say they want to climb. But as soon as the plane's leaving to take them to base camp, they get sweaty palms. They start saying, oh, I think my dog's sick, or I left the stove on. That's what gives you the edge. That's what can make you competitive, even if your genetics kind of suck. There are enough people not willing to do the basics that are easily doable, that you can actually get the edge. You can be the big guy on campus. So that's all I got to say, guys. Let me know about your experience getting to those numbers. What struggles are you having right now? Is there anything I missed? Leave it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.